The little girl did not cry when they took her, because the person leading her away was the one she trusted most. On a warm summer afternoon in 1983, 6-year-old Michelle Marie Newton believed she was going on a trip. Her mother had packed quickly that morning, moving through the small house with a nervous energy Michelle was too young to question. Drawers opened and shut. A suitcase zipped. Papers were folded, then refolded. "Are we going somewhere fun?" Michelle asked, hugging her stuffed rabbit. Her mother forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Somewhere new." Children rarely hear what adults don't say. What her mother didn't explain was that they weren't coming back. By the time Michelle's father pulled into the driveway that evening, the house already felt wrong. Still. Hollow. He noticed the absence before he understood it. The missing bicycle near the porch, the quiet that usually would have been filled with cartoons drifting through an open window. He stepped inside. "Michelle," he called. No answer. He checked her bedroom. Empty. Closet half cleared. Drawers open. His stomach tightened. He found the note on the kitchen counter, short, cold, deliberate. "Don't look for us." At first, his brain rejected the meaning entirely. People don't just disappear. Not families. Not children. He called her name again, louder this time, as if she might magically appear from hiding. But the house only echoed back at him. Within hours, police were involved. Officers quickly determined this was not a typical missing child case. There were no signs of struggle. No evidence of an intruder. No ransom demand. Instead, investigators focused on a possibility both simpler and infinitely more complicated. Michelle had been taken by her own mother. Parental abductions carry a strange kind of cruelty. There is no shadowy stranger to hunt. No mysterious van. Just a parent, someone meant to protect, who decides to vanish instead. At first, authorities believed they would find them quickly. Most parental abductions end within days or weeks. People run out of money. They contact relatives. They slip up. But Michelle's mother planned carefully. Bank accounts had been quietly emptied. A car sold for cash. Personal records removed. By the time anyone realized what had happened, she was already gone. Weeks turned into months. Sightings trickled in from across state lines, a woman resembling her at a gas station, a child with familiar eyes at a playground, but each lead dissolved under scrutiny. Michelle's father refused to sit still. He drove thousands of miles chasing rumors, studied faces in crowded malls, paused whenever he heard a laugh that sounded remotely like hers. He kept her room untouched. Birthdays were observed with a small cake, even when blowing out candles alone felt unbearable. People told him gently, "You have to move forward." But how do you move forward when your child is somewhere out there, growing up without you? Years passed. Then decades. The missing posters faded into archival boxes. Detectives retired. Files migrated from active shelves into long-term storage. Eventually, the case gained a label that feels almost like a surrender. Unresolved. Yet her father never stopped searching. Technology evolved. Databases expanded. Age-progressed images attempted to imagine the woman Michelle might have become: new cheekbones, older eyes, a face shaped by years no one had witnessed. Somewhere out there, she was no longer 6. She was living an entire life. The question was, did she even know she was missing? Michelle grew up under a different name. In a quiet town far from where she was born, neighbors described her mother as private but polite. They moved often enough to avoid deep connections, yet not so frequently as to raise alarm. To Michelle, this was simply normal. She learned early not to ask too many questions. Why don't we talk about the past? Why are there no baby photos before a certain age? Why do we move again just when things start to feel familiar? Her mother always had answers ready, gentle, believable ones. We like fresh starts. Some people from our past weren't kind. It's safer this way. Children build their reality from the information they're given. Without contradiction, Even the strangest life can feel ordinary. But confusion has a way of whispering. School forms requiring birth certificates made her mother tense. Doctor visits were rare. There were no extended family gatherings. No grandparents sending birthday cards. When Michelle once asked where everyone was, her mother simply said, "We have each other. That's enough." And for a long time, it was. Michelle grew into a thoughtful, observant young woman, independent but quietly guarded, as though some part of her sensed the invisible boundary around her life. Sometimes she studied her reflection and wondered who she resembled. Sometimes she dreamed of places she couldn't remember visiting. But memory is fragile, especially when you are taken so young. The mind adapts, accepts, moves forward. Back across the country, her father aged in ways grief often accelerates. Friends noticed how his hair whitened early, how laughter seemed to require effort. Yet he became something else too, relentless. He spoke at missing children events, collaborated with advocacy groups, repeated her story so many times he could do it without notes, though it never hurt less. "Someone knows something," he would say. "Someone has seen her." Many listened. Few could help. Still, hope is stubborn. It survives on the smallest possibilities. In early 2025, 42 years after Michelle vanished, a cold case investigator reopened the file as part of a statewide initiative reviewing long-term missing children. Cases like Michelle's carried a particular weight, not because they were unsolvable, but because somewhere, the missing child might still be alive. The detective noticed something earlier teams never had access to: modern digital cross-referencing tools capable of connecting decades-old records in seconds. He compared old documents, scanned school enrollments, and followed faint administrative trails that once would have taken months to uncover. Then came the tip. It arrived quietly through an online portal, just a few sentences from someone who had recently begun questioning a coworker's past. She doesn't have any childhood records before the mid-80s. Says her documents were lost. Something feels off. Tips often lead nowhere. But instinct told the detective to look closer. He ran the woman's information through multiple databases. Something didn't align. Her social security number had been issued unusually late. Her birth documentation appeared reconstructed. And her listed birthplace corresponded with a hospital that had no record of the event. Individually, these anomalies meant little. Together, they formed a pattern. Investigators proceeded carefully. After all these years, the possibility of error still lingered, and no one wanted to shatter an innocent life. A discreet DNA request was arranged under the pretense of verifying identity documentation. When the lab results arrived, the room went very quiet. The profile matched Michelle's father. After 42 years, she had been found. No one can truly prepare for a moment like that. Learning your entire origin story may not be what you believed. When authorities gently approached Michelle, now an adult with a life of her own, they chose their words with extraordinary care. "We believe you were taken as a child," one investigator said softly. At first, she thought there must be a mistake. Her mother would never. Would she? The conversation felt surreal, like stepping outside reality and watching it from afar. Questions crashed into her thoughts faster than she could hold them. Who am I? What else isn't true? Why? DNA confirmed what logic struggled to accept. The woman who raised her had abducted her. Shock rarely arrives dramatically. Often it seeps in slowly, reshaping everything you thought you understood. Memories replayed under a new light: the moves, the secrecy, the missing documents. Pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Yet beneath the confusion was another realization, equally overwhelming. Her father had been searching for her all this time. He never gave up. Their reunion was arranged privately. No cameras. No spectacle. Just a quiet room where 42 years of absence were about to collapse into a single moment. When he first saw her, he froze. Because there she was older, yes, but unmistakably his child. The same eyes. The same curve of a smile he had memorized from photographs worn soft at the edges. For a second, neither moved. Then she stepped forward, and he held her as though making up for 4 decades in one embrace. Somewhere between laughter and tears, time folded. "I looked everywhere for you," he whispered. "I know," she replied. There is no script for conversations like that. No perfect words. Only presence. Only the quiet miracle of finally not being strangers. The case quickly captured national attention, one of the longest missing child recoveries in recent memory. People everywhere asked the same question. How does someone live for 42 years without knowing they were missing? Experts explained that when a child is taken young enough, identity becomes whatever environment teaches them. Normal is learned. Truth can be hidden inside routine. But resilience is powerful. Michelle faced the revelations with extraordinary strength, choosing not to let the past define the rest of her story. Rebuilding connections took time. So did processing the emotional complexity love for. The person who raised her tangled painfully with the reality of what had been done. Healing is rarely linear. Yet through it all, one thing remained undeniable. She was no longer lost. Investigators later reflected on the role modern technology played in solving the case. 42 years ago, finding Michelle depended almost entirely on chance. Today, data speaks across decades. Records connect. DNA bridges impossible distances. It is a reminder that even the coldest cases are not truly frozen. They are waiting for the future to catch up. And sometimes, it does. On the anniversary of her recovery, Michelle visited the town where she had been born. She stood outside what had once been her childhood home, now occupied by strangers unaware of the history beneath its roof. The air smelled faintly of cut grass. A bicycle rolled past. Somewhere nearby, a child laughed. For a moment, she imagined the life that might have been: birthday parties with cousins, scraped knees her father would have bandaged, holidays spent surrounded by familiar faces. Grief touched that vision gently. But it did not consume her. Because while the past cannot be rewritten, the future remains unwritten. And hers was finally her own. Her father later said something that stayed with everyone who heard it. Hope is a decision. You choose it every morning, even when it hurts. For 42 years, he chose hope. And one day, hope answered back. Tonight somewhere, another family is waiting for news. Another detective is reopening a forgotten file. Another missing child is out there, perhaps not even knowing who they truly are. Stories like Michelle's remind us of something extraordinary. Time does not erase truth. It only delays its arrival. And sometimes, after decades of silence, someone is finally found. If this story stayed with you, take a moment before you leave. Subscribe, because this channel exists to remember the ones the world almost forgot.